The unexpected awakening David Thompson had always been a simple man with simple pleasures. His apartment in downtown Chicago was nothing fancy, just a small studio with a bed that creaked when he turned over and a refrigerator that hummed lullabies. At 3 in the morning, on this particular Tuesday night, he had fallen asleep watching reruns of cooking shows, dreaming of perfectly fluffed pancakes and golden syrup. When consciousness slowly returned to him, something felt profoundly wrong. The air tasted different, carrying hints of exotic spices and something that reminded him of ocean mist mixed with starlight. The surface beneath him was far too soft, far too warm, and definitely not his lumpy mattress that he had been meaning to replace for 3 years. David opened his eyes and immediately wished he hadn't. The ceiling above him wasn't the water-stained plaster he knew so well, but a swirling canvas of colors that moved like liquid aurora. Crystalline formations jutted from the walls, pulsing with gentle bioluminescent light that made everything look like the inside of a living jewel. He sat up quickly, his heart hammering against his ribs like a caged bird. The bed he occupied was enormous, carved from what appeared to be a single piece of translucent stone that glowed from within. Silk-like fabrics and shades he had no names for draped around him, and the room stretched out in impossible dimensions. That made his eyes water when he tried to focus on the far corners. "You're finally awake," came a voice that sounded like wind chimes mixed with honey. David spun toward the sound and nearly fell off the impossible bed. Standing near what might have been a window, though it showed not Chicago's skyline but 3 moons hanging in a purple sky, was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. She was tall and graceful, with skin that held an ethereal luminescence, as if she had been dusted with powdered starlight. Her hair flowed like liquid silver, defying gravity as it moved around her shoulders. When she turned to face him fully, David saw that her eyes were the color of deep space, filled with swirling galaxies and ancient wisdom. "Where am I?" David managed to croak, his voice sounding small and human in this otherworldly place. He looked down at himself and was relieved to find he was still wearing his favorite pajamas, the ones with little tacos printed on them. Somehow, this small familiar detail made everything slightly less terrifying. The woman smiled, and when she did, tiny lights seemed to dance across her features. "You are in the crystal palace of Luminara, in the heart of the Andorian Nebula. I am Princess Zara of the Celestial Courts." She moved closer with fluid grace, and David noticed that her feet barely seemed to touch the floor. "And you, David Thompson of Earth, are my destined mate." David blinked several times, hoping this was all an elaborate dream brought on by too much late-night television and expired milk. "I'm sorry, what now? Destined mate? I think there's been some kind of mistake. I'm just an accountant from Chicago. I do taxes and watch cooking shows. I'm definitely not anyone's destined anything." Princess Zara's laugh was like silver bells. In a gentle breeze, the Oracle of Whispered Futures saw you in the cosmic streams. She spoke of a man with a kind heart and gentle soul, whose dreams would bridge 2 worlds. The vision showed someone sleeping peacefully, surrounded by the warmth of simple contentment. That could describe millions of people, David protested, though he had to admit the description was eerily accurate. "Surely there's been some cosmic mix-up. Maybe your oracle needs glasses?" "Do oracles wear glasses?" "The oracle is never wrong," Zara said with gentle certainty. "She saw you specifically, David Thompson, apartment 4B, dreaming of pancakes and happiness. She saw how your heart yearns for connection, for love, for adventure beyond your small world." David felt his cheeks burn. It was unnervingly accurate. He had been feeling lonely lately, watching happy couples on his cooking shows and wondering if he would ever find someone who understood his quiet nature and simple dreams. "But I didn't ask to be transported to an alien palace," he said weakly. "Sometimes Princess Zara replied, her eyes twinkling with starlight. The universe gives us what we need, not what we think we want. Learning the rules of love the next. Morning. If morning had any meaning on a planet with 3 suns that rose in sequence like a cosmic dance, David found himself being attended to by creatures that defied every biology textbook he had ever ignored in high school. They looked like a cross between butterflies and small dragons, with wings that shimmered in colors that hurt to look at directly. These are the Lumina, Princess Zara explained, as one of the creatures carefully brushed David's hair with what appeared to be a comb made of crystallized moonlight. They are the palace attendants, and they have been very excited to meet you. Apparently, your hair texture is fascinating to them. David tried not to flinch as another Lumina examined his. Taco pajamas with the serious attention of a fashion critic. Do they always stare like that? It's like being studied by very pretty scientists. They have never seen a human before, Zara said, settling gracefully into a chair that molded itself to her form. To them, you are as exotic and wonderful as they are to you. Guevara, the blue one there, says your energy signature tastes like comfort food and Sunday afternoons. That's actually pretty accurate, David admitted, though I'm not sure how I feel about having a taste signature. Zara's expression grew more serious. David, I know this is overwhelming. Being chosen by the Oracle and brought here against, your will must feel like a violation of everything you thought you knew about reality. But please understand, this is not just about destiny or cosmic forces. This is about choice. She stood and walked to the impossible window, her hair floating around her like liquid starlight. In my culture, being chosen by the Oracle is the highest honor, but it means nothing without genuine feeling. We believe that true love cannot be forced, only discovered. The Oracle saw potential, not certainty. David processed this information, while Illumina measured his feet with what looked like a ruler made of solid light. So what you're saying is, the universe set us up on a blind date? Zara turned back to him, and for the first time since he had arrived, she looked uncertain. In a manner of speaking, yes. The Oracle saw that our souls had the potential for harmony, but whether that harmony manifests as love, friendship, or simply mutual respect is entirely up to us. What happens if we don't fall in love? David asked. Do I get sent back to my apartment to pretend this never happened? You are free to leave whenever you choose, Zara said quietly. I have the power to return you to your world at any moment. But I confess, I hope you will stay long enough to truly know me as I hope to know you. Something in her tone made David look at her more carefully. Despite her otherworldly beauty and obvious power, there was a loneliness in her eyes that he recognized. It was the same loneliness he saw in his own mirror every morning. You've been alone too, he realized. Zara nodded slowly. Royal obligations have kept me isolated from genuine connections. Everyone who approaches me wants something, whether it's political alliance, social advancement, or simply the prestige of being close to the crown. I have never met someone who looked at me and saw simply Zara. Well, David said, standing up and accidentally startling 3 Lumina who had been debating the theological implications of his pajama buttons. I don't know anything about politics or prestige. I don't even know what a crown means in your culture, but I do know what it's like to be lonely. He walked over to where she stood by the window. I spend most evenings alone in my apartment, watching other people live their lives on television, wondering if anyone would notice if I disappeared for a week. I dream about pancakes because they're warm and comforting and don't require me to be anything other than hungry. Zara turned to face him fully, and David was struck again by the depth of those galactic eyes. So maybe, he continued, we could try being not alone together. No pressure, no cosmic destiny, just 2 people, figuring out if they like each other's company. Just like that? she asked softly. Just like that, David confirmed. Though I should warn you, I'm terrible at small talk, and I tend to eat cereal for dinner more often than is probably healthy. For the first time since he had arrived, Princess Zara laughed with genuine joy instead of polite courtesy. And I should warn you that I sometimes glow in my sleep when I'm happy, and I have strong opinions about the proper way to arrange flowers. I think I can live with that, David said, and meant it. Cultural exchange and growing hearts. 3 weeks into his stay at the Crystal Palace, David had learned several important facts about interdimensional royal life. First, alien food was surprisingly delicious, once you got past the fact that some of it hummed while you ate it. Second, Princess Zara's idea of a casual walk involved floating through gardens where the flowers sang harmonies when the wind touched them. Third, he was falling in love, and it terrified him. You're thinking very loudly, Zara observed as they sat together in what she called the reflection garden. Around them, pools of liquid starlight reflected not their physical forms, but their emotional states in swirling colors and patterns. David looked down at his reflection, which was currently a nervous swirl of yellow and orange with flashes of deep blue. Is that what that is? I thought I was having a cosmic breakdown. The pools respond to honesty of feeling, Zara explained. Her own reflection was a complex dance of silver and rose gold, with threads of uncertainty weaving through deeper currents of growing affection. They were designed by my ancestors to help people understand their own hearts. Apparently, my heart is having an identity crisis, David muttered, watching as his reflection shifted to include streaks of green that he hoped didn't mean what he thought they meant. The green represents growth, Zara said gently, having apparently read his thoughts or his expression. It means you are changing, becoming more than you were. It's beautiful, David. Over the past weeks, they had spent countless hours talking. David had told her about his quiet life on Earth, his small apartment, his job calculating other people's finances, while his own remained perpetually modest. He had shared his dreams of travel, of adventure, of maybe someday finding someone who thought his terrible jokes were funny. Zara, in turn, had opened up about the weight of royal expectations, the loneliness of always being princess first, and Zara second. She had shown him the private chambers where she practiced her artwork, creating sculptures from crystallized music that took his breath away. She had shared her fears about ruling a kingdom, about making decisions that affected millions of lives. I have a confession, David said suddenly, watching his reflection in the starlight pool. I've been researching your culture in the palace library. Oh? Zara raised an eyebrow, her own reflection flickering with amusement. And what have you learned? Well, I learned that your people mate for life. Like literally for life. I also learned that the bonding ceremony involves something called soul weaving. That sounds both beautiful and absolutely terrifying. Zara grew very still. David, ... I also learned, he continued, his voice growing stronger, that you've never been bonded before. That you've been waiting for the right person for over 200 years. Our lifespans are different, she said quietly. 200 years for my people is like 30 years for humans. I know. I read that too. David turned to face her fully. What I'm trying to say is, I understand now why the Oracle chose me. Not because I'm special or destined or any of that cosmic stuff, but because I know what it's like to wait. I know what it's like to hope for something better while being afraid it might never come. Zara's eyes began to shimmer with tears that looked like liquid diamonds. David, you don't understand what you're saying. Soul weaving means sharing everything. Every thought, every feeling, every memory. You would be bound to me and to this world forever. Would you be bound to me too? He asked. Yes, but I'm already bound to this world, to my duties, to my people. You would be giving up everything familiar, everything human. David stood up and walked to the edge of the garden, where the palace walls opened onto a vista of 3 moons and a sky full of colors that had no names in any Earth language. Zara, what if I told you that everything familiar wasn't making me happy? What if I told you that in 3 weeks here, I felt more alive than I did in 30 years on Earth? She joined him at the garden's edge, her presence warm and electric. At his side, what if I told you that before you arrived, I had resigned myself to ruling alone, that I had convinced myself that duty was enough, that love was a luxury I couldn't afford? They stood together in comfortable silence, watching shooting stars that were actually living creatures dancing through the upper atmosphere. Finally, David spoke. "I'm not ready yet," he said honestly. "This is all still too new, too overwhelming. But I'm not running away either. I want to stay. I want to keep learning about you, about this world, about who I might become here. And I want to keep discovering the man who finds wonder in singing flowers and makes me laugh when I'm taking myself too seriously." Zara replied, "We have time. David, all the time we need." "Good," David said, taking her hand in his. Her skin was warm and seemed to pulse gently with inner light. "Because I have a feeling this is going to be the adventure of several lifetimes." Challenges from beyond the stars. David should have known that happiness in an alien palace would come with complications. The complication arrived on a Tuesday morning in the form of Prince Kale of the Crimson Nebula, riding a ship that looked like it had been forged from the heart of a dying star and powered by pure attitude. "Zara." Prince Kale's voice boomed through the crystal corridors as he strode into the palace without ceremony, his retinue of warriors clanking behind him in armor that seemed to absorb light. "I have come to claim what was promised." David, who had been enjoying a quiet breakfast of something that tasted like cinnamon clouds while reading about Andronian poetry, suddenly felt his peaceful morning evaporate. Princess Zara, who had been showing him how to make the palace flowers bloom with specific emotions, went very still. "Kale," she said, her voice carefully neutral, "you were not expected." Prince Kale was everything David was not. Tall, imposing, with skin that seemed to be carved from dark marble and eyes like burning coals. His presence filled the room with an energy that made David's teeth ache. When those burning eyes settled on David, still in his earth pajamas and holding a cup of luminescent tea, the prince's expression shifted to something between confusion and disdain. "And who is this?" Kale demanded, gesturing at David as if he were a peculiar piece of furniture that had been left in the wrong room. "This is David Thompson," Zara said, moving protectively closer to David's side. "He is my guest." "Your guest?" Kale's laugh was like grinding metal. "Zara, we have been betrothed since childhood. The union of our houses was sealed by the Council of Stars. You cannot simply ignore centuries of tradition for a whatever this creature is." David felt heat rise in his cheeks. "Creature? Listen, tall, dark, and brooding. I may not be from around here, but I have a name, and I'm sitting right here." Kale's eyes widened slightly, as if he hadn't expected the creature to speak. "It talks." "He," David corrected, standing up despite the fact that Kale towered over him by at least 1.5 feet, "is a person, and he doesn't appreciate being discussed like he's not in the room." "David," Zara said softly, her hand touching his arm, "please." But something had snapped inside David. Maybe it was weeks of feeling out of place. Maybe it was the careful confidence he had been building through his time with Zara. Or maybe it was just that he had dealt with enough bullies in high school to recognize the type. "No, Zara, I get that there's politics here I don't understand, but basic respect is universal." He turned to face Kale fully. "Prince Kale, I understand you have some kind of arrangement with Princess Zara, but from what? I've learned about her culture, The heart cannot be commanded, only given freely. Kale's hand moved to the weapon at his side. You dare lecture me about our culture, alien? I dare stand up for someone I care about, David replied, proud that his voice didn't shake. And I dare suggest that maybe, just maybe, forcing someone into marriage isn't the best foundation for a happy relationship. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, to everyone's surprise, Zara began to laugh. Not the polite, controlled laughter of royalty, but genuine, delighted amusement. "Oh, David," she said, her eyes shining with affection and pride. "Do you realize you just challenged a prince of the Crimson Nebula to defend my honor?" "Did I?" David looked between Zara and the increasingly red-faced Kale. "Is that good or bad?" "In our culture," Zara explained, "it means you have declared yourself my champion, which means Prince Kale must either accept your challenge to formal combat or withdraw his claim." David felt his knees go weak. "Combat? Like with swords and things that could kill me very dead?" Kale's expression had shifted from anger to something that might have been respect. "You would risk your life for her? A soft creature from a primitive world? First of all, Earth isn't primitive. We have the internet and air conditioning." "Thank you very much," David said, his survival instincts apparently having taken a vacation. "Second, yes, I would risk my life for her. Because she's worth it. Because she deserves to choose her own path." "And what path would you offer her?" Kale asked, his voice now curious rather than hostile. "What can you give her that I cannot?" "I offer alliance between star systems, armies to protect her people, wealth beyond measure." David nodded, his throat tight with emotion. Over the past months, he had learned exactly what the soul-weaving ceremony meant. It wasn't just marriage as humans understood it. It was a complete joining of beings, a sharing of life forces that would bind him to Zara and to her world forever. He would gain her extended lifespan, her connection to the cosmic energies that powered her civilization. But he would also give up any possibility of returning to his old life. "I understand," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "I choose to bind my soul to Princess Zara's, to become part of her world and her people, to share in both the joys and responsibilities of this life." The oracle's presence seemed to smile, though she had no physical form. "And Princess Zara of the Crystal Palace, do you choose this bond freely, without coercion from duty or destiny?" "I do," Zara replied, her voice strong and certain. "I choose David not because the oracle saw him in the cosmic streams, but because he has shown me what it means to be truly seen and loved. I choose him not as my destined mate, but as my partner in all things." The ceremony that followed was unlike anything David could have imagined. As they touched the binding crystal together, he felt Zara's consciousness merge with his own. Her memories flowed into him, centuries of loneliness, the weight of royal duty, the gradual loss of hope that she would ever find genuine love. But also her joy in art, her deep love for her people, her growing affection for a confused human who made her laugh and saw her as simply Zara. In return, his memories flowed to her, his quiet childhood, his years of loneliness in Chicago, his small dreams and simple pleasures. She experienced his wonder at discovering her world, his growing love for her and for the life they could build together. When the crystal's light faded, they were no longer two separate beings who had chosen to be together. They were two souls intertwined, sharing a single destiny while retaining their individual selves. "How do you feel?" Zara asked softly, as the witnesses began to disperse and the chamber's formal atmosphere gave way to celebration. David considered the question carefully. He could feel Zara's presence in his mind, like a warm glow, could sense her emotions as clearly as his own. The connection was intimate beyond anything he had imagined, yet it didn't feel invasive. Instead, it felt like coming home. "Complete," he said finally. "For the first time in my life, I feel complete." They walked together to their private balcony, where 3 moons hung in the purple sky, and the city of crystal spires spread out below them. David marveled at how different his perspective was now. Through his bond with Zara, he could sense the life force of the entire city, the contentment of citizens who knew their princess had found happiness. "Do you miss Earth?" Zara asked, settling beside him on the balcony's edge. "I miss some things," David admitted. "I miss the smell of rain on concrete, the taste of really good pizza, the way the sun looked setting over Lake Michigan. But I don't miss being alone. I don't miss wondering if anyone would notice if I disappeared." "You could never disappear now," Zara said, taking his hand in hers. "You are woven into the fabric of this world, into the story of our people. Your children will carry both human and Andronian heritage. Your descendants will remember the man who came from the stars and chose love over everything familiar." "Children?" David asked, his heart skipping a beat. Zara smiled, and through their bond, he felt her happiness and anticipation. "Did I forget to mention that part of the soul-weaving ceremony?" "You definitely forgot to mention that part," David said, but he was smiling too. "Though I suppose if we're going to revolutionize interdimensional relations, we might as well start with the next generation." As they sat together under alien stars, David reflected on the journey that had brought him here. He had gone to sleep a lonely accountant in Chicago and awakened as the bonded partner of an alien princess. It sounded like the plot of a ridiculous science fiction movie, yet here he was, living it. "Zara," he said softly, "thank you." "For what?" "For seeing something in me worth choosing. For being patient while I figured out what I wanted. For giving me a love story I never could have imagined." She leaned against his shoulder, her hair tickling his cheek. "Thank you for choosing me. Back, for seeing Zara instead of just the princess. For showing me that the best adventures begin when you're brave enough to say yes to the impossible." In the distance, the city's crystal spires began their nightly song, a harmony that welcomed the stars and celebrated another day of peace and prosperity. David closed his eyes and listened, feeling the music resonate through his bond with Zara, through his connection to this world that was now truly his home. He had fallen asleep in his bed and awakened in a royal alien palace. But more than that, he had awakened to a life he never knew he wanted, a love he never believed possible, and a future that stretched out before them like an unwritten symphony waiting to be performed. And it all started with saying yes to the impossible.